Okay, I'm making a batch of liquid soap here. This has no milks in it. I didn't trust that my goat milk powder was still any good. It had been there for more than, what they say, 8 months, 8 weeks, I don't know. So I came up with I'm also out of castor oil. So I came up with the recipe. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's basically 9 ounces of coconut, 12 ounces of olives, 4 ounces of soybean, and 2 ounces of refined shea butter. And then here's my alkalis, my lye and water and everything. So it's just a real basic recipe, no big deal. It is basically what I had thrown together from the oils that I would have typically made a bar soap with had I castor oil and enough olive oil. So since my stock, my production stock is depleted, we're going to just make maybe a couple batches even of some liquid soap. I do want to try out my new fragrance oil from Indigo Fragrances. This one's called Heather. It really, to me, doesn't smell like a heather. It has very high floral content. It smells like it has lots of honeysuckle in it, is what it smells like. So this will take a few days to sit before I can fragrance it. Now, the stages of making liquid soap in comparison to bar soap is totally different. It's a difference between cold process and hot process. In hot process soap, which is basically what you do with liquid soap down to make it into a paste instead of a formable batter like for bar soap. My recipes, because I want my liquid soap to be a little bit thicker, typically with just straight potassium hydroxide, they are a lot thinner in consistency once you dilute them. However, if you add a little sodium hydroxide, I go about 10%, then it does thicken up your liquid soap. It also, not to a consistency that we want today, really. You still have to add either a salt water, borax solution, or if you're high in coconut, more than 20% on your liquid soap recipe. Sorry about the shake, like I am here. You're going to have to use Crotix to thicken. Personally, I don't mind a thin liquid soap, but because I put some sodium hydroxide in, it is going to give it a lot better consistency. Now, you don't have to keep on mixing with your stick blender. This liquid soap is going to trace when it wants to trace. Because it's high in olive oil, it's probably going to take a while, and my arm's going to get tired. So I go between just kind of stirring it around. I've got it in my crock pot on high. Right now, it's at 128, 129 degrees. We do want that a lot hotter. So let's mix some more so we don't get separation like we're starting to get here. All of our stuff is starting to separate, so let's mix it up some more. Now, unlike bar soap using 100% sodium hydroxide, it won't matter if you get bubbles. Yeah, my shoulder's tired. Now, I usually mix it until these bubbles form, and then I stir all the bubbles down. If you keep your bubbles in your mixture, they will incorporate into the paste. And at the very first, because you've got some stages to go through right now, I don't even know where we are. We're not even in, it is kind of tracing a little bit right there, but it's still wanting to separate. But it's going to get hard, and you'll be able to tell just by moving around. Right now it's starting to get thicker, but let's go some more. Anyway, what I was saying, I go till I have bubbles, and then I mix those bubbles down, simply because this paste because it has a lot of coconut oil, and I found when I make my laundry detergent that I cannot use my small crock pot because the coconut oil really foams up after it's hard enough to not mix with a stick blender anymore and barely able to be mixed with a wooden spoon. It does really expand. So what I'm trying to do is to keep the bubbles down, or at least knock them down as I'm mixing this up. We don't seem to be separating anymore. It's almost getting to a trace. You can tell. You can always tell. People say, look for this, look for that, look for this. I don't worry about that. I keep it in the back of my mind, but I know whenever it's ready to be stopped stirring and just cooked. Let's use the spatula a little bit, see if we can't knock some of those bubbles down and scrape it off the side. See, it's starting to get to a pudding-like consistency. It's still too thin to be considered a pudding, even though it does seem to be tracing. That's a false trace, technically, is what I read. Now, a lot of people do their liquid soap paste differently as far as how they cook it. Some people will put it in the oven for about 2 days, and that does get a lot. That does really work too. Me, I want as immediate of gratification as I probably can get, and working it in a crock pot like this serves that. Some people say that it's really not done after 4 hours. I've found in my tests that it is. Now, granted, I only use pH test strips to test my pH on my soaps, and I really need to get a pH meter. I just don't sell enough soap to warrant the expense right now. Now, you can tell what this is getting close to trace. It's no longer separating anymore. Always keep stirring your liquid soap. It relies on heat and agitation in order to mix and trace. So always keep something going. Scrape off some of this excess on the edge. Okay. Let's go it again. Now it's looking like it's ricing, but it's really not. No fragrance oils have been put in. You have to wait till you sequester your diluted soap a number of days before you neutralize it with borax and before you put in your fragrance oil. Now, depending on your fragrance oil, it might smell good in soap and it might not. I've tried some fragrance oils that smell terrible no matter which soap you use or which method you use, bar or liquid. They just smell horrible either way. Now, to test fragrance oils in liquid soap, you would make one batch, like I'm doing here, sequester it, neutralize it, then separate it into smaller batches and test it out. Oh, I'd test it out maybe a bottle is about 8 ounces. I'd probably test it out just in one bottle. Just heat up enough 8 ounces of diluted soap, diluted and neutralized soap, and then put however much percentage of fragrance oil needs to be put in there. Seems like we're still separating a little bit here. We'll mix it up some more. Now, I don't talk while I've got the blender going. There's no point, you can't hear me. So I'll just speed through those times. But as long as I'm stirring by hand, I can talk. See, it seems to be coming back together now a little bit. Once you get a few batches of liquid soap under your belt, so to speak, meaning failed or successful batches, doesn't matter, just trying the process out for a few times, you'll get to know when this is starting to get ready. You can tell how the movement is not as liquidy as it was before. Cats are fighting. Oh yeah, cats are fighting. I might have to turn off and go separate my cats. No, they seem to have stopped now. Okay, no. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, that's done. Now, they got me all excited. And I'm breathing hard. I look so much better. Look at that. It's almost there. Let's whiz. Now it's not getting nearly as many bubbles in it. Now going back to when you'll know when this is ready or not, I've ruined enough of these $20 blenders trying to get it to go through a thick paste to be able to feel it. See, we're coming to a trace right here. This is traced, but we want it really, really hard. This is your pudding stage. A little bit more will be actually pudding stage. Still doesn't hold up too much. Let's whiz it. Now, one thing you might notice, when I'm getting to this stage, I don't whiz it. I don't use my blender as often or as long. Because once it gets to this stage, it's going to trace, it's going to harden up to mashed potato and whatever other stage they call it on its own. Liquid soap will do it in its own time. You can sit and whiz it all the time and force it, but why? Why tire yourself out when it's going to trace when it's going to trace? I think I saw a black dot in there. Maybe not. See, it's almost there, you can tell. And I did put a high coconut content in, 3/4 of the olive oil. Scrape it down some from the sides. Now, once this hits the consistency we need it to be so we can cover the pot, then the only thing that's going to be able to be moved through this hard paste-like gel stuff is going to be a very, very thick wooden spoon. And you'll have to chop it up. And I'll show you that. Stir this a little by hand. Pull everything off from the sides. You can tell on my spoon here, it's kind of pasted up. Let's get that down in there. That's good stuff. Now, I could probably just stir it by hand, but my carpal tunnel is bothering me today. Keep on telling my doctor there's something wrong and he won't listen to me. Just because I have mental problems, he thinks I am an annoying patient. He treated me like that last time. I really need to find another doctor. Okay, it's getting there. You can tell. It's getting hard to move the spoon through it. I think one more whiz will do it. Scrape all this good stuff off. Put it in there. Okay, let's do one more whiz. Okay, that's all we're going to be able to do. Look at it. It's going to thicken up real quick now, so let me go ahead and get this off my blender before it thickens up to the point where I can't get it off. See? Get as much off as you can. Oops, that kind of flew away. Okay, now we can take this attachment off and get my blender out of the way. I can no longer get that mixer through here. This is much too thick now, and in a minute I'm going to need to use a wooden spoon. This is the point that I stop my blender and I go strictly to hand stirring. Everything's blended up. Putting that sodium hydroxide in, even 10%, made this 223 is when I started. It's 248 now. So what's that? 25 minutes for this recipe until it reached this point. Now, we're going to stir this as much as my poor arm is going to allow me to, so it doesn't separate, which it still could do, technically. And I really should have gloves on, but, you know, I can't wear gloves. I've got some, but my hands don't work right anymore, so I'm just kind of like a crab trying to use gloves. Let's let this set. And then I'll be coming in with this spoon. And this spoon is going to allow me to get in and really break it up. I'll show you right quick. The spoon. See how well it allows me in here to actually turn all of this. Technically, I should be turning this and stirring it still until it really hardens up, but I think I can do it like this and let this work its way through. So I always like to keep a spatula and a spoon so I can wipe off my spoon. Look at all that. Don't want to waste that. Okay. Now the spoon doesn't really get the sides too well, so I'm going to go ahead and run my spatula along the sides and scrape that off too. Okay. Alright, let's go about 10 minutes, maybe 15, and we're going to come back and look at it. And then if it's gotten harder after 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to be able to wait in 30-minute increments after that, or 30-minute intervals. Okay, so I'll bring you back whenever I look at this.